Oh, hi YouTube. So I was doing some guitar lessons earlier, and a student of mine and I got on the subject of David Bowie. And I thought, geez, there's a guy who I'd like to draw up an astrology chart for. I thought he was an interesting guy and an interesting musician, and I was always a fan of his stuff, and probably will always continue to be. I think he's really one of the good musicians that we had and lost last year. Um, so I thought I would draw an astrology a natal chart for him. So here's what I got. I thought he has the same birthday as Elvis Presley, which is January 8th, but his was a different year. His was 1947. Elvis was 1935. So their numerology is a little different, and their charts are a little different. But now this makes David Bowie a birth path number 3 when you add up all of his numbers. Um, Now, number 3, I'm actually a birth path number 3 too. Pardon me. Now, house number 3 is ruled by Gemini. So that gives you the uh, duality and rules things like time travel and communication and uh, the sort of. It's also, powered by. So Mercury is the same as Hermes, right? And this is the hermaphroditic thing that David Bowie was really playing up in large numbers. I think it's supposed to be a metaphorical thing where you're looking for the balance, but he was doing it in a very physical way and making a public persona out of it, and that's that whole glam rock thing that we'll maybe touch on in a few moments. Now, I noticed that January 8th is actually a sun in Capricorn. Now, on the surface, he always seemed to me like an unlikely Capricorn. Capricorns are, normally not wild and outlandish in their appearances and their art and whatnot. But looking a little closer, um, David Jones might be a Capricorn, but David Bowie seems to be somebody else altogether. Um, his sun in Capricorn is actually in the 12th house, and that's the hidden and secret life. So he might be fairly traditional off stage and in his normal day to day life, contrary to his public image. I mean, that's what I glean from it. But he has the Aquarius rising, and that's where the wild hairdos and the futuristic space age persona come from. And that makes sense now. He's an Aquarius rising. I would have thought that he was an Aquarius immediately, but but that's what it is. Now, really, upon closer inspection, it seems that he has a lot of Leo energy in his chart. That seems to be his dominant sign, even though his sun is elsewhere and his rising is elsewhere. He does have it's a very well aspected Leo energy in his chart. He has a Leo moon, and this Leo is there. There's your sign of celebrity and stardom and the spotlight. So he really has a moon opposite his ascendant. So anybody who has something like that, let's say a moon sun opposition or an ascendant moon opposition, there's usually identity struggles right there. So the identity struggles, might go more than skin deep sometimes. I think when you play these different characters for long enough, I think actors probably go through this all the time. But that Leo moon is in the 7th house. So that's the house of marriage and contracts and things. And we know that Leo was the house of stardom. And he did have a celebrity marriage. He did have a marriage to the supermodel Iman. I think that's how you say it. And I think that was rare because it was one of the famous marriages that lasted longer than 12 minutes. I think it actually went the distance, as far as I know, anyway. Now, he has a midheaven in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is really the maverick. And I would say that that makes sense, too, the public image. He was always doing things his own way. Venus is conjunct his midheaven. So Venus being in the public image, I mean, he was adored by everyone. Men and women alike were intrigued by his appearance. Taking that glam thing and making it a larger than life thing. He took it from being a fairly niche marketed thing to being a huge movement that, I don't know, I think it still really exists to this day when you see the sort of hermaphroditic. What's the word I'm looking for? Dionysian, figures that you see in the public sphere. Now, the true north node I noticed is in Gemini, and that makes sense too. The true north node, I mean, they'll always say that that should be your life's ambition or the direction of your life. I want to know more about that true north node stuff. I'm only just scratching the surface of that, but if that's in Gemini, there's that again, that duality, the different faces, the different voices. He was a collector of different voices. So Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and that always rules the voice, right? And that's what I read. I read in an interview that he said he was a collector of voices. I thought that was kind of cool. Now, he has a Uranus in Gemini as well, and I think, geez, there's a guy who is Uranus in Gemini. Uranus is that rebellious, futuristic, avant-garde energy that just comes in and strikes things down like a lightning bolt. And speaking of lightning bolts, that was always part of his public persona. So he had that lightning bolt on his face or on his suit, or that was certainly something. So I think there's a lot of Uranian energy there with his Aquarius ascendant. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. The dominant houses in his chart seem to be the seventh house. And that is not only the house of marriage and contracts, but it's also the house of partnerships, too. He had a lot of great collaborations, and he had, producers that he stayed with over the years that nurtured his persona along. But I'm a guitarist, so I was thinking about all the different collaborations that he had with really great guitar players over the years. Mick Ronson was one of them, fantastic rock star. Carlos Alomar, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then some of my favorite guys like Adrian Belew, Robert Fripp. In the 90s, the guy Reeves Gabrels in his band, I thought was just a phenomenal guitarist. One of my favorites. He also has a lot of 12th house energy. Now, this is like a hidden and occult energies. And I know that David Bowie had a strong interest in esoteric and weird stuff, as so do I. This is why I'm doing this. I knew he was a reader of Aleister Crowley. He was a reader of Blavatsky. Dion Fortune was another one that he was really big on. And I've even heard stories about him in Los Angeles in the house that he was renting, or whether, I don't know if he owned it or not, but he was doing some of this black magic stuff, and he either inadvertently, by accident, raised a water demon in the indoor pool that was in his house. It's actually, you can read about this online. It was around the time he was doing the Station to Station record, which is full of really occult kind of Aleister Crowley themes. And I think one of the sort of more bizarre aspects of it that I think he was doing a lot of drugs at the time, so that wasn't helping. But he was in dire fear of Jimmy Page coming to get him with his own black magic against him or something, and it got very strange. I remember thinking this was very strange. So there's a lot of strange stuff that David Bowie was in that was not always public knowledge, but some of that magic and occult witchcraft he was really interested in at the time. The 10th house is also pretty strong too. Now, this is accomplishments, and I think we can agree that he had a lot of those in this 40-year, 45-year, maybe more music career. There was lots of stuff. He left us with a lot. So when everyone says, hey, we need David Bowie to come back, yeah, it would be nice, but why? He gave us a lot. There's a lot to dig through. It's going to take us a lifetime to dig through what he did give us, so let's be happy with all of those accomplishments. So all in all, it was sort of an interesting chart that suggests that there's this wild, futuristic, creative rock star, and on the whole other flip side of the coin, there's this traditional life that he probably led alongside of it, away from the public eye. That's probably where we get our split between maybe David Jones and David Bowie. That's just a cursory glance at the chart. I didn't get too in depth with it, but I thought it gives us a sense of, a little overview of who he might have been. Anyway, that's it for now.